detail. Critics believe that over the years, workers' unions seem to have been deep into the mucky waters of politics, and the workers' plight and needs have not been adequately addressed, with real issues lost in a battle that bordered between actual labor activism and politics. We hear what the ZCTU have to say.
It doesn't make sense for organized labor or Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions to speak of any partisan politics, because they remain politics. When things fail, they'll find each other. We once had a government of national unity, but how many workers suffered before? Then they found each other at the expense, at the detriment of workers. So partisan politics is not our issue. But politics, we speak politics because those are the policies that determine what we eat, at what point.
Employers recently have been giving workers a raw deal in terms of salaries. Most big companies that recorded a super profits and declared a dividend can hardly afford to give their workers salaries above the poverty datum line.
It has come to a point that workers can't afford to live within the means of their salary, not on the basis that they can't budget, but on the basis that they are getting salary that is way below the poverty datum line. And as organized labor, particularly Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, we are saying an economy that is dollarized, it has to come also with a dollarized salary. As we are speaking right now, we are looking at a way where an employee is even charging in US dollars. But when it comes to paying salaries, it goes back to Zimbabwean dollars. That also speaks volume, not partly on the government alone, even on the employers that are getting income in US dollars, failing to remit the same to workers in Zimbabwe in US dollars.
Our President Mnangagwa says that employers should ensure workers are treated and rewarded fairly for their contributions. He was speaking in an address to mark May Day celebrations.
The importance of ensuring workers are rewarded fairly for their contributions cannot be overemphasized. In this regard, I implore all employers to deploy innovative reward strategies. Our economic growth must cascade to the workers, with their quality of lives being uplifted.
Now, the President also expressed hope that the Labour Amendment Bill will be finalized before the dissolution of Parliament this year.
The Labour Amendment Bill, which seeks to entrench the rights of the workers at the workplace and also deal with emerging malpractices in our labour market, is being prioritized among the bills to be finalized before the dissolution of Parliament.
Now let's take a look at the bill. The bill seeks to align the Labour Act with the Zimbabwe Constitution and international labour standards ratified by Zimbabwe. Now, the bill also restricts the termination of fixed-term contracts. The bill also provides that no fixed-term contract shall be for less than 12 months. Any fixed-term contract of less than 12 months shall be deemed to be a contract of an indefinite period. And also, retrenchment package becomes payable to fixed-term contract employees. And finally, the bill provides that a code of conduct expires after 5 years. The situation with salaries in some companies in the private sector has been so bad that even government workers on average are now better paid. This is despite the fact that government workers themselves are still pushing for better salaries. From a survey carried by ZTN Prime, on average, the lowest paid workers in the private sector are earning the equivalency of around $250, an amount that a number of government workers get as a foreign component on top of their Zimbabwean dollar salary, and that excludes other benefits that government workers have. The reality on the ground is what we have. Now we cross over to human resources expert Request Machimbira to get more insights. Mr. Machimbira, government is working with a tight budget. Private sector has been declaring huge profits, and government workers are now better paid than some workers from better established companies, the majority which are listed on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Can you try and make sense of that for us?
In any economy, government is the biggest employer, and if you are to go back into history, you'll discover that government has always been an employer of choice. From the time we got independence, possibly up to the time of ASAP around 1995. Post ASAP, I would recall that private sector generally became the more preferred employer due to its lucrativeness, and also as a result of its flexibility around the compensation issues. So the current matrix therefore needs to be understood in context. We are emerging from the COVID environment where the majority of private sector companies took a huge blow, which affected its financials, which affected its philosophy, and the 3 years of COVID at peak were not easy for the majority of private sector companies, and the scars will be felt in a very long period of time. Some companies did not recover, some are still limping. However, as for those that are doing well, they were left with a very high cost consciousness. So you'd find that as we speak right now, private sector generally has got a less appetite for expenditure, and naturally salaries therefore become a casualties. On the other hand, private sector also needs to be understood as a big basket with different types of players. Some are doing well on the salaries of front. In particular, we can single out the banking and mining sectors, whilst on the other hand, some are perennial strugglers. We are talking of sectors like agriculture, clothing, commerce, textiles. We are talking about struggling in terms of productivity, and naturally private sector cannot outperform the performance of an economy, and therefore a salaries conversation without productivity conversation is naturally insufficient. I think the major discourse should be on how private sector needs to be enabled to optimize productivity. This must be a timeless national conversation.
All right, now, Mr. Machimbira, do you think with more competition for skills, the situation could change for workers? And has monopoly in certain areas been the reason why workers are getting a raw deal as they have no alternative?
I don't think that the issue of competition is going to be the solution for compensation issues in the country. In my opinion, this is more to do with productivity. Competition has always been there. Companies have competed within themselves, within the country. They are also competing on the international front. There is skills flight. The fact that there's been skills flight in the country, there's no correlation experience between skills flight, that is competition, and improvement of workers' salaries. And so I think the major issue is not necessarily competition. Generally, our economy is not a monopolistic. It's not a monopolistic economy. Generally, it's very fluid, very flexible. So major issues are affecting salaries to do with the ability of organizations to optimize their performance, and so the conversation that we ought to be championing, particularly for the sectors where salary issues have been perennial, what we need is to have more conversations around policy, more engagements, honest engagements with employers, strengthening bipartite relationships between employees and employers at sector level, I think we need more collaboration than anything else.
And that was Request Machimbira, a human resources expert, giving us an in-depth knowledge of the different dynamics on this issue of salaries. Efforts to get a comment from the company's perspective were fruitless.